is simple enough. Everyone, everywhere should be able to live a good life without harming the planet. That's the sustainable part of sustainable development. Without the planet, we don't have a home. So those goals are really about keeping our home functioning well. Now, as I have said throughout the series, at the end of the day, a national plan is just that, a plan for every national, for every Jamaican, for every person. We are the ones who live in our houses, we are the ones who live in our communities, so we all have to act. So it's all about partnerships. And today we have a distinguished guest in the house. She's Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. And what she does, she oversees Jamaicans' foreign relations with international trade. She works on economic partnerships and trade agreements. She advocates for Jamaica on the global stage and focuses on sustainable development through foreign policy. Thanks so much for joining us,
Thank
Senator.
you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about the SDG goals in relation to your ministry. How do the two interact?
Well, we are, we are part of all 17 goals. Jamaica, as you know, when we became independent, one of our first acts as an independent country was to become a member of the UN. And since then, we have established diplomatic relations with more than 170 countries, and we ensure that our engagement within the UN and with our partners are all geared around supporting Jamaica's development, and in more particularly Jamaica's sustainable development. And since we signed on to the SDGs, which I like to point out, came after Jamaica had our own Agenda 2030, so that the fact that we ended up with an alignment that's more than 90% between the SDGs and Jamaica's National Agenda 2030 is something of which we're very proud. It put us in a place to always recognize the importance of partnership discussion within the UN. We view multilateralism with the UN at the center of it as the most enabling tool for small countries like Jamaica and our neighbors to ensure that we're able to achieve our development goals. Because of course, small countries have the same vote as big countries in a body like the UN. And it is in those spaces where we ensure that policies that are taken on the global stage are aligned and enabling for countries like ours.
So let's talk about some of the work in greater detail in terms of the work we're doing with our development partners. And one of those areas is in relation to what we call development assistance. So just like our family might get help from friends when they need extra support, Jamaica gets help from international partners. Can you tell us about how financial institutions in particular have helped Jamaica with trade and exports?
Well, I wouldn't speak about it so specifically, because there's trade capacity building, there is human capacity building to help us to have the knowledge base to enable our ability to trade, and then there's the systems that are required to trade. There are the agreements that are required to trade, and for example, our economic partnership agreement with the EU, which is an agreement we entered into in about 2010. When Brexit occurred and the UK left, in 2019 we signed an economic partnership with the UK. Both agreements have a technical capacity element which allows us to seek development support to enable our capacity to trade.
Let's break that down. When you say technical capacity, what are you talking about?
I am talking about the ability to have systems and processes that facilitate the movement of goods, to have software that you understand that reduces trade, that reduces your tariffs in accordance with the agreements that you have, that ensure that there are SPS standards, that's your sanitary and phytosanitary standards, that they are maintained and that they are not barriers to trade. It makes sure that you are able to navigate and to share with businesses within your country how it is they can trade. The establishment of information portals like JSwift and JTIP that allow businesses to now go online in Jamaica to see how they can trade, and that's part of our economic growth agenda.
So in other words, helping us to learn how to trade better.
How to trade better and how to facilitate trade. And that's one small aspect of how it is that we deal with trade. But our engagement in terms of development assistance is much broader than that, and it really touches on all 17 of the SDGs. But of course, SDG 17 is partnerships. So we would say that SDG 17 is at the core of what we as Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade do, because what we do is we engage with multilateral, bilateral, and hemispheric partners in order to build Jamaica's capacity to deliver the SDGs to the people of Jamaica.
Let's take that idea down to like the community level. So
Sure.
we say multilateral, bilateral partners. In terms of like a person living in a house or a home, what can we relate that to that they would find relatable?
Let's think. Let's think about SDG 2, which is end hunger. We have a food security policy, which we engage in with the Food and Agricultural Organization of the world and also with CARICOM. In CARICOM, we have a 25 by 25 program, which looks at reducing our import bill 25% by 2025. And what this is about is making sure that that food that comes into Jamaica that we can produce here actually starts getting produced here instead of being imported. And that we're trying to do across the Caribbean by 25%. And some of that means that Jamaica will produce maybe more chicken for other CARICOM countries to produce. And maybe Ghana will produce more rice.
Yes.
Exactly. So, or from Suriname, which may well be the case. More orange from Belize. But we will be importing within the CSME rather than, or producing for greater export within the CSME rather than importing from northern countries.
And the CSME there is a CARICOM single market and economy.
Indeed. So what that means is we'll be reducing the amount of foreign exchange that we spend to bring food into the country, which will help to make us more self-sufficient and bring prices down.
All right, so that's in relation to partnerships. Let's talk about building skills.
Well, that was end hunger.
End hunger, I'm sorry, end hunger. But also embraces this idea of partnerships as well, because you work with people at different kinds of levels.
All of it's part.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about technology and innovation. And when we say technology, we're talking about things that allow us to work smarter instead of perhaps harder. And when we talk about innovation, we are talking about new ways of doing things. So first, let's talking about technology. How do we work with our partners to improve how we use technology?
Oh, fantastically. Let me give an example, for example, and this would also include SDG 16, which is justice and stronger institutions. So maybe about 2 years ago, we had a study visit led by our Minister of Justice and our Chief Justice and the court administration system to go to Rwanda to look at their court digitization system for us to ensure that we improve on a partnership which we already had with the EU to improve the amount of technology used within our court system. So this now allows, for example, persons who are overseas to give evidence through our consulates and embassies in the US or the UK
like video testimony.
Or Canada. Yes, they give video testimony now, and that's facilitated through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade for the Ministry of Justice, so that when people leave, they don't just forget about a case or it doesn't become more expensive for the case to be prosecuted. So we do that, for example, but we're also looking at how to digitize the entire system in terms of all the records that are available, all of the cases that can be found and searched online. So that's just one example of using technology, but we work across the piece in so many ways. There's a digitalization program. World Bank and IDB have supported us in a national identification system. We now have our RGD, our Registrar General's Department, is of course now able to deliver most of its services online. We can also deliver our Braille certificates, Braille birth certificates.
Yes.
And I mean, there's so much that happens now. The ability to pay taxes online, the ability to pay your to pay for registration of your license, etc.
To
all
get
of those
a new
things
license
online.
online.
Yeah,
all
these
of
are
that can be done
basic
online.
systems that digital technology facilitates for people. I always say when people fear technology, sometimes we are forgetting to look at how it makes life easier. So when you can receive your pension directly to your account, it means you don't have the indignity of standing up in the hot sun all day and then trying to take taxi from one place to the next or bus to.
Also saves your money.
Absolutely saves money. So we are working on how we can deliver more services to our citizens so that they can access them with dignity and easily. And a lot of partnerships exist with the EU, the IDB, that's the Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank in order to facilitate these things.
That sounds like a mix of both what we call technology as in using systems smart about innovation, which is completely new methods overall.
Absolutely.
Are there specific...
And stronger cities, yeah.
Are there specific projects related just to innovation as in new ways of doing things completely?
I think that Senator Morris Dixon is probably the better person to speak specifically about the projects that are underway. I've just mentioned some in terms of how it is that we're modernizing delivery of systems, delivery of funds, but I'm sure that she would have more specific examples to give in that regard.
No problem. Let's talk a little bit about trade and economic growth. So just like how trading snacks at a school can benefit everyone, how have trade agreements with places like the European Union and help Jamaica's economy grow and develop?
Well, how they grow is by providing markets which essentially have preferential rates for our exports, so that small businesses, and again, this is where digital technology comes in, you now don't have to set up an entire business in a new country in order to trade with that country.
So this is me in St. Catherine. I'm talking about this at who wants to farm breadfruit, and I want to farm breadfruit. I want to sell breadfruit powder somewhere around the world. How does the trade agreement help me do that?
Well, after you've gone to the SRC and the Bureau of Standards, you have made sure that you've gone to the Ministry of Agriculture, you have made sure that your standards are met, that your ingredients actually, you go to the trade board as well, make sure that what you're putting in there fits within the regulations for importation into the other country. What we are saying is that the agreements that we have in place set the framework for you to be able to export to that country at a lower cost than another country might be able to. So you have a competitive advantage. So if you're producing your breadfruit powder or your breadfruit flour, probably more efficiently, then you are able to go online, find the tariff rates that you would want so that you can understand your cost base and export to the EU.
If this is
markets here.
Is this information I can find on the ministry's website, for instance?
You should find a link there. The Trade Board is revamping their website, but there should be a link on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. But the MIIC, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, actually is the parent ministry for the Trade Board. We set trade policy, and the MIIC deals with actual trade in terms of their engagement with the businesses and how it is that they can export. So you always hear about Minister Hill, for example, going on trade missions, taking business people to learn about the business environment in other countries.
But on the basis of the framework that you've said?
Based on the framework agreement that is in place.
But you would have been having discussions? Because
absolutely,
again,
we work closely together.
From that kind of perspective, and you've been mentioning, I want to make that point before I go on to the other, because you mentioned Senator Dana Morris there, you talked about Senator Hill there, that all of these are discussions that you're having with ministers at different kinds of levels. Yeah. How do you ensure that there's a sort of level of coordination so that, X knows what Y is doing?
Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is sort of the unseen hand for Jamaica's engagement with the world. So every ministry that engages with the world, they come through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. So we're always, essentially, so we are always in partnership. We're always an interlocutor. When I go away, I'm briefed by other ministers to ensure that we are carrying the single message and that we are representing points and issues from their ministries. That's how we ensure that our partnerships are aligned with our national development goals. And I think, again, I started at the point where I said our national development goals are more than 90% aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's very important for us because it means that everything that we're doing as determined by our medium-term socioeconomic framework, and that is the framework that sort of sets what government does for every 3-year period, that helps us to keep focused on what needs to be done to deliver this Jamaica that is the place to live, work, raise families, and do business, and retire in paradise.
And as you've spoken of alignment there, it's important to note as well that not just from the perspective of we developed our own plan earlier and the plan is aligned with the United Nations plan 90%, which is quite remarkable when you think of us developing it on our own. That's one. But two, we are a leader in other ways as well. So you're talking a little bit about the fact, for instance, our role in helping the world overall, which has been a little bit behind on some of the SDGs, you know, just get ahead or make up ground that was lost as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about that and the role, for instance, of the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. I mean, first, let's start at the point that we are 7 years into the SDG plan and the world is off track. Let us accept that as a fact. The entire world is off track, and the question is now how to get back on track. Prime Minister Holness and Prime Minister Trudeau actually co-chair within the UN system the group of friends on SDG and financing.
This is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada.
Of Canada, yes. So Jamaica and Canada at the prime ministerial level co-chair the UN group of friends on SDGs and financing. And they have been pulling together, about 80 countries are members of that group. And they work on how it is we can bring more public and private finance into supporting developing countries to achieve their SDGs. And coming out of that, just recently, the Prime Minister was asked to co-chair again with Prime Minister Trudeau the SDG Stimulus Leaders Group. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has determined that the world must inject some serious funding into SDGs to get the world back on track. And he has charged Prime Minister Holness and Prime Minister Trudeau again, because of this base that they have within the SDG Friends group, to lead this group of advocacy, which is essentially 12 country leaders that are expected to now advocate and with the multilateral partners, the international financial institutions, and bilateral partners, developed countries, on how it is we can put more money in this space. And this includes Spain, Brazil, I think Barbados is a member. They are the only other Caribbean country, Brazil. Every continent is represented and every region, but Prime Ministers Holness and Trudeau chair that. And that was launched just this week. That is going to work toward, that group will work towards reporting during the UN General Assembly, where we'll also have the Summit of the Future. So last year within the UN, we had the SDG Summit, and I was happy to lead Jamaica's representation in that summit, looking at how we get back on track. And this stimulus was one of the things that came out of it. And so I'm very proud that Jamaica is leading in that aspect as well. And we're going into the Summit of the Future, which is saying we can't only be planning for now and getting back on track. We really have to look beyond. And Jamaica is co-chairing with, I believe it is the Netherlands. We are co-chairing the Declaration of the Future, which is the voice of the youth and digital transformation, how it is we really work for the future. And all of these things have to be based on achieving these 17 goals and going beyond. So Jamaica has a strong voice and a leadership voice on the world stage in this regard.
And in that regard as well, we have to achieve our own goals, because we are the ones leading these discussions. So, you know, you have to do what you're telling everyone else to do as well.
Absolutely. And we have actually the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade co-chairs with the PIOJ, the National Oversight Committee for the SDGs. So because we are partners with everybody, and because we are at the, that juncture between the world and Jamaica, it is important for us to work with PIOJ on how it is we are doing, as well as how it is we can leverage partnerships in order to get more done.
I want to talk a little bit about the role of different partners, not just development partners, but also just individuals, what they can do, because you know, I keep saying we are the ones who live in our homes and our communities, and these goals affect us on, you know, at that level as well. So let's talk first about how development partners can help us more, or what kind of role they can have in helping us achieve the SDGs.
Well, the issue of financing is really at the crux of the issues that developing countries are having. There are so many things that we are seeking to do to recover from COVID. And Jamaica has had a fantastic recovery. We really have done very well, but we still have so many challenges. And imagine other countries where workers have lost jobs, where public sectors have been cut, where it is that their debt has skyrocketed and they've been unable to bring it back down, where the cost of living has skyrocketed as well, and their inflation continues to balloon, and they have been unable to bring it back down. So countries that have struggled with some of the same challenges that we have, but they have not been able to conquer them in the way that we have been working. So financing is at the heart of it, and I've told you about that work. One of the other elements that I could mention is the fact that we are advocating for a change in how development partners finance developing countries. This is geared around establishing what is called a multidimensional vulnerability index. Right now, when a country does well and changes its category from a less developed country to a more developed country,
harder to get funding.
Yes, it becomes much harder to...
But your circumstances have not necessarily
absolutely
drastically changed.
The OECD has their own way of determining that once you have made this leap called graduation, that you become disentitled. So you're almost punished for your success. You become disentitled to certain types of grant funding, to certain concessional rates, etc. And what we've been saying is, here in the Caribbean, in particular, we are one of I think we're the second most climate vulnerable region in the world. Plus, on top of it, we are significantly dependent on economic segments like agriculture and tourism.
Yes, yes.
So we're doubly vulnerable. And on top of it, we are one of, so we have climate against us, and we have a dependency, and we have the size and scope, which makes it difficult for economic flexibility. So we're saying countries that have that type of vulnerability, when we move by OECD criteria, we are still vulnerable. And therefore, we should be considered in a different way. We need an objective, empirical way to determine vulnerability, so that international financial institutions can have a different way of thinking about our need for financing.
Yes.
And this is, therefore, this is something that has caught on. An MVI export report was actually delivered last December. It's being reviewed now, and we expect it to be reviewed and debated in this September coming up within the UN or within the Summit of the Future itself. This is something that we think is very important. It can change the game for developing countries significantly.
Give it a lot more access to financing,
absolutely.
Which means
that is
so
the
many
aim.
things.
That is the aim. But we work bilaterally. So, for example, the UK provides grant funding for its Caribbean Infrastructure Fund through the CDB, and that is helping us support the Essex Valley irrigation program that's going on. We have grant funding from the UK and the EU that's helping us build out our mangroves to help with our sustainability of our coastlines. We have, of course, partnerships with the US on security and justice, primarily through USAID, but that's again helping with safe and secure and just societies. We work with, the US helps us, I think, on education as well, as does the UK. We have violence prevention programs. We signed a £15 million violence prevention monitoring and evaluation and beyond program that should last over the next few years to help us with how it is we evaluate our systems and how it is we then use that to make our programs more successful. If we go across the piece, I don't think there's an SDG that we can find where we don't have a program. Jamaica also works closely to obtain funding through the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, and that is to help bring about facilities. We have a new blue-green facility that we will be offering through the DBJ that will allow companies to get funding for climate-friendly businesses, etc. I mean, there's a lot that's being done. Financing is at the key of, is at the heart of it. We partner with the UN Environment Program, with the International Labour Organization, because of course decent work is a big part of economic growth as well. We work with the International Organization for Migration and harnessing our diasporans and dealing with the integration of our involuntary returnees.
A lot of...
Yes, UNDP, UNICEF, on our children and our justice systems, our restorative justice, our child diversion, our the conflict resolution and mediation, all of that coming through justice, but through UNICEF, through UNDP. We work through of course, I've mentioned World Bank and IDB already. We have, I mean, you name it, UNAIDS dealing with us on the health.
You name it, you have some sort of partnership with them,
UN Industrial Development Organization. We are there. If they exist, we have a partnership, and we have a robust engagement.
So twofold there,
yeah.
The ongoing engagement,
yes.
and that spreads across ministries and
yes.
different areas of the population in terms of how they're affected, but also in terms of the financing. So that's the development partners perspective right there. And I want to talk about community organizations and individuals, how they can be part of that sort of conversation. What if I'm in my house, what should I be doing? Because I hear Vision 2030 sounds very big, but how can I get involved at the micro level? What kind of information should I be seeking out?
That is a very interesting question for a Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. A very difficult one for me. No, but essentially, get informed.
Yes.
I would say visit your GIS website, where there are always interesting stories about programs that are ongoing. And PIOJ is doing a great job through programs like this. Thank you, and congrats, by the way, for sharing more information. But there are things like beach cleanups, which help with SDG 13, which is, climate and environment, and also not throwing your plastics, separating them, finding out where's the nearest recycling center in your parish, and whether people collect those things. There's a new program that will allow you to earn from returning plastic bottles and glass bottles, which help keep the world cleaner and keep our gullies and seas and our oceans cleaner. You can find out how it is that you can have a home garden where you can eat what you grow. Ministry of Agriculture has backyard garden packages that help you figure out, they help explain how you can do your own little farm, and they provide seeds and little tools that you can start off small, and you can start with a pot too. You don't have to start, if you don't have a yard, you can start with a couple pots that help. You can grow scallion and tomato. as I did in COVID-19. So essentially two things. Seek out information on one level and get involved. Get involved. There are things that you can do. There are choices that you can make about your life that help with ending poverty, with ending hunger, with empowering women and girls, that help with our education sector. Is there a homework center in your community or your parish where you could volunteer? There are things that you can do that help to improve the world we all live in, the community, the family, then the community, then the world.
Yes.
That's how we impact, is by informing yourself, as you have said, and then by actually taking intentional decisions about doing something differently. So
that way you can understand that when we say a plan is a national plan, it's a plan for every national, and you're a national, you're a person. So you can do a lot. Thank you so much, Minister and Senator Johnson Smith, for joining us today, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Remember, you can get information from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade's website and social media pages, and on broader development issues as well from the Planning Institute's website rather, and social media pages. So thanks again for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Goals. I'm Archibald Gordon. Until next time, take care.
We care about our minimum wage earners. That is why we increased the minimum from the previous increase of 13,000 to now 15,000. And as our economy continues to improve, you can look forward to even more increases. Your government is caring for you.